What's going on, guys? Today at the Castle Battle Arena, that needs a name, so if you can come up with a name, chuck it down in the comment section below. But yeah, today we're going to be tackling the spectator stands, so take a seat and enjoy. So the first thing I did was lay down a platform using the floors in the warehouse section. Then I chucked down some stairs at either end. Now the platform is laid out, I began by adding seating on it. Of course, this is the apocalypse and we've got to use what we have. So I mixed it up by using old sofas and chairs and even some tables and just little bits and bobs. I continued by making a second platform using the same style of flooring. Then I simply threw down some steps before moving on and fencing off the front of the stand. The original snapping position of the fencing was way too high because clearly anybody sitting down up here wouldn't be able to see what's going on. So I simply lowered it down a little bit using the mod place anywhere. And like always, I made sure I mixed up the fencing as I went along so it wasn't too repetitive. Even though we have quite a wide selection of fences already, it still can get quite repetitive if you're doing a lot of fencing like I am. So I tried to mix it up and use some new ideas by using bridges. I used one from the shack and I believe one from the industry bridges to simply just use their fencing, and even their flooring kind of adds a little bit more texture detail and just mixes it up a little bit. Speaking about mixing up a little bit, I went into the snap and build real estate section. Now I normally don't use that much simply for the fact I find it's too perfect and too nice looking from the builds I go for, but because I was using just a simple little stairs just to kind of fill in this gap and mix up a little bit, I weren't too worried of how it looked and it kind of suited it and it worked. So let's move on. Once again, I added some more seating. This time I used some containers as well as the seating just to mix it up a little bit. I didn't want to keep using the same seats over and over again because it kind of takes away from the realism. And come on, who's gonna like travel all over the apocalypse, getting sofas and chairs and traveling our way back here? It's just too much effort. And for the last section of this area, I wanted to kind of change it up a little bit simply because it makes it look a little bit nicer. But also it was getting a bit boring doing the same thing over again. So I simply added the shack wall and roofs all the way across the last section. So he kind of had a place to go inside. This was going to be the kind of averaged price area and seating area. I'm not too sure if I'm actually going to have seats in here. It might just be a standing area. But this is going to be the better area because obviously it's out of the sun, out of the weather, and it's a little bit higher up. So I placed two stairways going up to either side, then I began blocking off and filling in underneath, before going back and finishing the top, as I kind of worked out what I was going to do with this area. I wanted to add two bigger areas on each side so people could walk in and kind of move around, and then I wanted a small long corridor where people can stand. So I simply added a shack and roof to each side. Then I continued to wall off this entire section, before going back and realigning the stairs and adding another little platform so they were able to come up, open the door and walk in without having an awkward corner. Once the stairs were aligned properly, I went ahead and blocked off the rest of the area, making sure I added enough support underneath of it. Then I took a step back and I gotta say it looks pretty good. It works with this settlement, but we still got quite a bit of work to do on it. So to make the doors fit and not have random gaps on either side, I simply added a column to fill in the gap. To finish off the first stand, I simply walled off the one side and then added some lighting that fitted the build. Then I added a small refreshments stall to the one side. To add a nice little touch to it, I added some neon lights and a little barrel with some beers on. I took away the Nuka-Cola vending machine and the little box in front because I found it was just too much. It was a bit overkill. While I was trying to figure out how I was going to do the next stand, I just did a little few bits and bobs around the settlement. For the second stand, I came across these stairs, which I used simply for the fact that it made my life a hell of a lot easier, but it still went with the rest of the settlement because there's a lot of kind of stone in this settlement. So to make sure it was all lined up properly, I simply laid down some floors and then snapped the stairs to them. Then I simply removed the flooring before I started off blocking off the sides. I have noticed in the comment section, yes, I do read the comments from time to time. Sometimes I haven't got enough time to answer them. Maybe I'll do a video of just simply answering the comments like every now and then. Or maybe not. But yeah, I have noticed a lot of you asking about the sandbag walls. There's now a mod that is just dedicated to them, which of course I will put down in the description below. So if you want that, you can check that out. Moving on, I added some more of that flooring and I wanted to mix it up a little bit. So I simply added the mesh one and then I added the wood one and I just slightly lowered it so it kind of blended them both together. Then I went ahead and blocked off the back of the stand using a lot of the barn pieces, but they had a lot of gaps and holes in them, which I actually liked, and that's why I used them, because I was able to simply fill them in and kind of mix it up a little bit. The main part of the stand was finished, but remember, a dead customer is a non-paying customer, so I went ahead and fenced off the top section of the stand. The steps themselves were looking kind of boring, so of course I needed to break it up a little bit by adding a range of different items and objects and even some chairs every now and then. I made sure I had them little kind of gaps there, bits kind of randomly placed, and I could kind of make a little platform wall off a little bit and add a chair or two inside. Then I simply threw down some chairs and couches on the top of the platform to finish it off. For the next platform I used the stairs again, but these are actually different. They're not as steep as the other ones. I only added one lot and I made sure I left a little gap so I could add a little feature later on. Then I added a quarry catwalk along the top. Then I added another set of concrete steps that will lead to a top platform. To make room for them, I moved one of the other quarry catwalks and placed it on another one, and I really liked the way it looked. So of course I kept it, but what I didn't keep was the stone stairs. I wanted some wooden ones as I found it would fit better. So I threw down a shack bridge and blended it in with some boards, before dropping in two slightly different stairs. One was a little bit higher than the other, but I was actually going to use this to my advantage and kind of break up the kind of look. I wasn't too feeling the kind of meshy flooring at the back, so I simply used the same technique as I did before. To make the platform, I started off by using a scaffolding, laid down some floor, lined up the stairs, and then I moved the floor bit into position. To join the two floors together, I simply used some steps. The platform still needed more support, so I added a nice kind of shack bridge in the middle and then a smaller scaffolding piece on the end. Then I chucked down some boards just to mix it up a little bit. I took a step back and went outside the castle by the entrance to see what it looked like. And to be honest, when I looked at this, I thought it definitely needed a sign somewhere here. So I simply went back, I did some massive junk fences, lined them all up nicely, and then this is going to be where I'm going to have my big sign once I worked out what sign I'm going to have. Then once again, using the same technique and style as I have throughout this whole build, I began fencing everything off. Then I added a little pier in the gap, made sure I fenced that off as well. Then to wrap up this part, I simply went ahead, added some little bits of clutter and fencing around the sides, made sure I fenced off the front as well, added some seating in the small pocket areas and on the pier, and then I simply went downstairs and noticed the pier was coming through. Instead of having to remove it and iron it and kind of messing up, I simply added another one, lined it up so it kind of looked like a support beam, and I'll kind of just work on it when I get to this area in the future. So that's it guys, this is another part done. I'm not too sure what we're going to be doing in the next part, so you gotta stick around for that. Obviously if you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.